Hello and welcome to Deep Impact, a proud member of the Duffel Network. We dive deep into our both's most diabolical work 5 years on. Coming up next is Elliot Diebold.
And that was Ruben Morehouse.
And we pick up with 5.2, with Blake, getting undressed and being put in jail. Do not collect $200, do not pass go.
And he loses his special boots that he got from the lawyers. And he seems pretty attached to them. Like, this is something he actually gets a bit hung up on. And I wonder, it doesn't seem like he actually likes the boots. It's just because the lawyers gave it to him, and it's like, well, he had to pay a price to get that from the lawyers. So it's almost like a sunken cost type thing going on.
Yeah, he definitely doesn't want to be paying prices to those lawyers and not even, keeping the thing.
Yeah, exactly. Like, yeah, if he just bought the boots, I don't feel like he would have cared that much.
Yeah, definitely. So, the first thing he does when he gets thrown in jail into a cell is picking at a scab and using the blood from this scab to do a little bit of blood magic. Resourceful.
Yeah, he's been out of glamour for 5 minutes, and he's already back to blood.
Yep.
What could go wrong?
Yeah, his good old fallbacks. Yeah, and we see what goes wrong, I suppose, later on this chapter.
Yeah.
We see how reliant Blake has become on blood. So, Evan's here, obviously, which we found out at the end of the last chapter, but he seems to have kind of regressed much more to, like, June-style Ghost, where he's, reciting things a lot more.
Yeah, and, it's sort of like, because he's being autopsied, as well, which presumably, I think Blake theorizes, is not helping his, I don't know, wholeness?
Wholeness, yeah. Humanity, maybe?
Yeah.
It's interesting. I wonder how many ghosts, like how easy is it to become a ghost in Pact, right? Because, Evan was a bit of a special case where the hyena basically scared off whatever was meant to take him to the afterlife, but June didn't really have, as far as we know, any special circumstances around her death. She just froze to death, right? Which is not, it's not a nice way to die, but it's not a particularly out there death. So yeah, ghosts can't be that uncommon. And it's a bunch of ghosts must get autopsied, which must be so strange.
Yeah, I guess it depends. I don't know if all ghosts are as attached to their body as Evan is. I don't know. But yeah, certainly some of the ones that are stronger and seem a bit more, a bit more like Evan, where they're a bit more conscious, may have experienced themselves getting autopsies, which would have been harrowing, I imagine.
Yeah, I can't imagine it's a comfortable sensation.
No.
So Blake and Evan are kind of chit-chatting. Blake is kind of filling in Evan more. They really do pick up the conversation right from where they left off, back in the woods, where Blake's kind of filling in Evan more about what it would be like if Evan was his familiar and kind of, running him through basically how it would work.
Oh yeah, but there's also a lot of focus on, like, what the hell they do now.
Yeah.
But there's definitely this sense throughout the whole conversation that Blake is just constantly making sure Evan doesn't feel, or Evan's not there out of a sense of obligation. Like, Blake is just constantly hammering home, you can go if you want to, and it's it's nice. It's very heroic almost.
It is. There's a really nice moment between them when Blake kind of tells Evan, and is kind of speaking to himself here and recognizes that, tells Evan that he's not to blame for what happened to him. And it's this real, like, emotional moment of growth and vulnerability for Blake. It's like, oh, look, Evan's already kind of helping him out.
Yeah, just trying to help someone with similar issues has forced him to voice a thought he hasn't really allowed himself to voice for years. And that's going to be significant.
Isn't it funny? This companion, not Rose, is the one that helps him reflect. Isn't that interesting? Also worth noting is, I think you're right that they do have some similar issues, but Evan is like a child and Blake is like 20. I don't know. Maybe he should be able to kind of process some of his things a little better without having to see them also being the issues that a child is facing.
Yeah, I mean, I guess that, but it's funny how people work like that. Like, you may not necessarily confront or even realize something that's going on with you, and then you see it in someone else, and you sort of like, oh, that I do that too. And I think that's sort of what is happening here. Is Blake is as he says, he's been thinking this, but he's never really been able to bring himself to say it to himself, and saying it to Evan kind of forces him to do that as well.
Yeah, you're right. It is a very human trait of kind of needing to see your flaws somewhere else before you can recognize them in yourself.
Yeah.
So Evan kind of agrees to help Blake, and Blake comes up with an ingenious little plan.
Yeah, which is go look for stuff, I guess, and come back and report.
Go
while I
find
sit
some
here and
these
take a
weird
nap.
Spirits. Yeah. Wow. Blake really takes advantage of his helpers. Get them to do all the hard work while he takes a nap.
Yeah. In 10 chapters, Evan's going to be just as bitter as Rose, while Blake just sits around taking naps.
Yeah, taking naps and getting his ghosts to do his work for him.
I mean, we're making fun, but I don't know what else. Like, I can't come up with a better plan. I could probably sit here for hours and think, and that's as good as I'd come up with. So,
yeah,
I don't really know why we're making fun of him. I guess it's about as good as you're gonna get.
Yeah, a really fun beat throughout this conversation is since Evan is kind of a bit more ghost and a bit less, I don't know, sentient. He's participating in this conversation by kind of replaying segments of things that he said before he died that are semi-relevant, and Blake kind of has to interpret what he's trying to say. It's this vibe that like reminds me of Bumblebee in the Transformers movies, who would speak by like tuning into things with his radio and getting these disjointed little audio clips. It's like a really fun, just a fun little beat that kind of keeps the conversation fresh. Yeah, it's makes it more confusing but more entertaining.
Yeah, I really like that comparison to Bumblebee. That's actually a really good fit. And it's yeah, you're right. It's just sort of it makes the whole conversation a bit unique, and you just have to think about it a bit more. And it's just a nice bit of variety that we have thrown in. It's cool.
Yeah, so they enact their genius plan. Evan goes off to kind of get help, and Blake kind of goes back to thinking, I need something else other than just Evan. If only I had someone else here to help me. Oh well. Instead, he kind of calls out to the Knights of the Basement, kind of using that old trick that Fell told him was very rude. But Blake does it anyway.
Yeah, well, and this would be the third time he's done this to the Knights of the Basement. Second or third. He's really starting to probably push the boundaries of that friendship. I don't know. We haven't really ever seen them come to pick him up, but I wonder if they've actually had the conversation where the Knights of the Basement are like, dude, that's a real big pain in the ass. Can you not?
Yeah. Blake gets a little bit of his own medicine here. He's kind of in bed when suddenly, for a moment, I felt alarm surge through me. The same momentary panic that came with a sudden sense of falling, lying in bed. Was I being manipulated? Enchanted? This kind of jumped out at me, but I didn't kind of realize what it was until my second read through, which is, this is somebody calling out to him, right? This is his reality being tugged at. I like that he gets a bit of his own medicine here.
Yeah, I agree with you. The first time I was like, oh, that's weird, and then I sort of kept going. And the second time, I think your conclusion makes the most sense. It must be, this must be what you experienced, which, it sounds really disorienting, and I can see why people wouldn't like it.
Yeah, it sounds horrible. I hate that feeling. And so having that feeling happen to you multiple times would be very annoying.
Yeah, absolutely.
Anyway, so this kind of wakes up Blake from his nap, and the Knights are outside the police station. He kind of sees them. They call out to him. I mean, they call out to him with his name, and he calls back to them with their names. And Blake sends Evan to kind of guide them into the station, and just kind of gets back to thinking about how screwed he is.
Yeah, he's just sort of listing off everything that's wrong and everything he has to do. And I like this line because he says, "I feel good, a little too good." It's like the one thing he has going for him is that he feels quite good, but that's tinged with this knowledge that that's at Rosa's expense. So he can't even have good things. Everything is terrible for Blake right now.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, a little too good is. You're right. I kind of just interpreted it as, I can't let myself get caught up feeling good because I've got stuff to do. But you're right that he might be thinking, and probably should be thinking, I feel good because I'm draining Rose.
Yeah, you're right. I hadn't considered that Blake wouldn't consider that that's what it was, but maybe he didn't.
Yeah, when have you known Blake to ever immediately think things like that without Rose's help?
Yeah, that's a good point.
So Blake kind of estimates there's about 16 hours left until his timeline is up, until he's, until he has failed to capture the obscure demon, the abstract demon.
If only there was a way that he could get more time.
Well, we'll see. We'll see about that. Duncan comes back and tells Blake, hey, there's a witness who's come forward to corroborate your story. And Blake is thrown into the interview room again and asked questions to kind of corroborate what the witness is saying.
Yeah, and there's a little fun thing, because it seems like whoever this witness was lied to the police. And so it's exactly what I think it was Sandwich, the user, talked about in our discussion question, which is presumably the Knights sent one of their muggles to go in and take advantage of the fact that they could lie.
Yeah, it might have been the Knights who said to Blake, hey, it's useful to have someone who isn't a practitioner in your group so that, they can lie for you.
Mm. And it's great because it gives Blake this thing, like, presumably if Duncan hadn't been interrupting the flow, you could phrase it like Blake could be like, well, I bet you the witness told you this, and just repeat what Evan says. And then it's like, because that would come across as technically true, but also him spouting that would make it sound like the truth. Yeah.
I don't think Duncan's going to let him play those word games, though. He's getting questioned about all the stuff, and Blake gives all the right answers. I mean, yeah. So Evan is was in the interview with the witness and is there just kind of spouting the answers to Blake. It's so perfect. It's such a neat way to get around what is quite a clever trick in the mundane world, but it doesn't work in the practitioner world. And Duncan is clearly thrown off by this and not really able to do anything about it.
Yeah, he does get some salt out to try and toss at Evan to dismiss him, which I really liked because, so Evan sort of gets out before Duncan can do that.
Yeah.
If he hadn't, I just wonder what Duncan's excuse would have been for just throwing salt around the room.
I dropped my fries and I thought I'd salt them before I picked them back up.
He'd be like one of those people from, those black and white commercials where he's just tripping. Does this happen to you?
Whatever. Yeah. There must be a better way. Anyway, so Duncan is getting upset about this and kind of tries to back him into a corner. And Blake kind of pushes back at him and sees the connections indicating the tricks that Duncan has pulled to kind of get around the fact that he has a connection to Laird and there's this whole conspiracy thing going on, potentially. Duncan has got himself back into the interrogation room and Blake can see these, gilded connections in order to do so.
Yeah, so Duncan's magicked all these various connections. And I like how this sort of manifests. The first time Blake brings up Laird, the lawyer and the other cop just kind of act as if he hasn't really said anything.
Yeah. Duncan kind of reacts to their non-reaction, kind of being very smug at Blake.
Well, yeah, I mean, Smug seems to be his middle name, basically.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, it's so fun watching. I don't know, he's so fun to hate because I was talking about this in the comment thread on the previous chapter, but Laird is a fun villain because he knows what he's doing and he's fucking over Blake, yes, but he has reasons for it. But Duncan kind of comes across as being just as smug and as much of a shitbird as Laird, but just doing it because someone else told him to do it. He's such a jerk, and he completely underestimates Blake here and totally gets screwed over because of it. It's so fun.
Yeah, I agree. He has all the smugness of Laird, but for some reason he doesn't have the. Yeah, he doesn't seem to have the grandiose stuff to back it up. He just comes across as a bit more of an arrogant little shit.
Definitely an arrogant little shit. And Blake kind of blusters his way around, kind of continually referencing the fact that Duncan is related to Laird, there's this conspiracy, what's going on, and eventually this kind of shatters the gilded connections that Duncan has made, and Duncan gets pulled out of the investigation room again. And the captain tries to keep Blake in custody, but eventually admits that he has to let him go, and there you go, charges dropped, Blake wins. It's all done.
I love the little theatrics. Like Blake has to do the thing where he slams the table on the third time. He's taking advantage of all these rules he's learnt. And he's doing the third time's the charm, and he's doing what Miss Lewis taught him, and he's playing it up. And it's just, these are such fun mechanics. Like that's so fun. Like watching someone have to be overly dramatic because in universe that's the best way to do it is just so much fun.
Yeah, it's ridiculous and great that, you know, whatever Blake does, if he makes it a more compelling and dramatic literary experience, that actually helps out his case more, which is a wild conceit, but it's one that makes Pact so much fun.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so yeah, Blake's free to go, and he heads out and he goes home and everything's good and he's happy.
I like this bit as he's sort of being let out, to go home and be happy. He has this thought. He's like, it all came down to time. And on my first read through, that just jumped out to me, and I was like, you're dealing with the Baheims. That's not a good thing.
Yeah,
time's not an asset when you're dealing with the Baheims. It's what makes them perfect adversaries for right now, I think, or Duncan in particular as a kind of Baheim that's presumably surmountable.
Yes, and it does all come down to time, because when Blake gets out of the interrogation room, Duncan's there. He's spray painted symbols onto the wall of the police station and kind of activates this symbol, which means Blake wakes up after passing out and the knights are outside the police station to help him. He sends Evan to guide them and gets back to thinking just how screwed he is.
Yeah, it's a real window of opportunity situation. But yeah, so before we go forward too much, I think it's interesting. So Duncan specifically says Blake's name. And then, that's like the one thing Blake understands from this spell. And then Blake remembers that he's in the loop. So I have to imagine there's some karma or power-related reason why Duncan brought Blake. Because tactically, it would make so much more sense to leave Blake unaware that this is the second go. Because Duncan would have all sorts of advantages, whereas Blake, the only reason Blake even makes it out of the cell this time is because he's aware that it's the second go. So it's an interesting, I assume we'll get more details on it later, but it must be related to powering the spell or not getting absolutely horrific karma.
Yeah. We'll see how we go, I suppose. I do love this part, though, because, Duncan has been this smug jerk the whole time. And this is the first time where he really feels like a villain. Like, he's clearly... He feels so, unhinged, right? You can picture the scene in your head. Everyone in the station is kind of baffled at him seeming to lose it, and he just kind of is staring Blake down and then, touches his hand to the sigils and off goes this crazy trap. It's like, yeah, it really kind of turns him from, oh, just a jerk that Blake's going to easily overcome to, oh shit, this is an actual villain here.
Yeah, well, it's a bit where he, his mask comes off and his gloves, really. Like, he goes just sort of all out, and it's so public, and he kind of gets away with it because he's doing a time reversal spell, so there's not really any permanent effects. But you're right, it does give you this sense of just him sort of going to the next level or taking things to the next level and just really, becoming a bit more of an antagonist rather than just a, dickhead who's working against Blake.
Yeah, definitely. So Blake wakes up again back in the morning when he woke up from his nap. Only this time Duncan knows all of his tricks and is going to intercept the knights and stop the witness and cut off all of the tricks that he pulled. Yeah,
but Blake knows that Duncan knows. But then Duncan knows that Blake knows that Duncan knows.
Good point. So maybe Duncan's in. Yeah. Oh no, but Duncan knows that Blake knows that Duncan knows that Blake knows.
Yeah, a bit of competitive Groundhog Daying is a really fun idea. I like it.
Yeah. Man, I love time manipulation shenanigans. Right, like the Baheims they're such pieces of shit. They're so smug and human, and of course they manipulate time. Like, it's awesome.
As you said before, they're villains that you just love to hate.
Yeah. So Blake kind of makes a little bit of leap of logic here, where he surmises that Duncan is saving all of his best tricks for go around 3, because as everyone knows, it's a 3-beat. The third
time's the charm.
Third victory is the best, and so Blake kind of sets up to win on the third loop.
No, sorry, you mean Blake sets up to win this loop because he's...
Right, sorry, yes. Yeah. Blake sets up to win the second loop, so that Duncan doesn't get a chance to win the third loop, the more powerful loop.
Well, yeah, because he's basically assuming that Duncan has kept cards up his sleeve, and Blake knows he doesn't have cards up his sleeve, so he needs to win as soon as possible.
Yeah, he needs to, if Duncan's not going to use his tricks, well, maybe that means I have an opportunity to use all my tricks here.
Yeah.
And so, Blake is back to needing help. And of course, all of his other best friends from throughout the story aren't available. The boy that he's known for 12 hours and the convenience store family he's known for 13 hours. So he'll have to find some other, he'll have to find some other ally that he could count on. And I guess that means Rose.
Yeah. He eventually got there. But what it takes to get Rose back here kind of justifies why he hasn't tried yet. It's pretty rough.
Yes, Blake kind of realizes that he's been draining Rose for a long time, and he's going to have to put all that energy back in. So he starts fondling a toilet, or having a toilet fondle him, and uses it to draw blood, and basically bleeds himself out using the power from the blood to feed Rose.
But he doesn't just, give himself little pricks. He cuts both of his arms right up. I got the impression this is going from, wrist to elbow.
Yeah.
He must be bleeding profusely. He's such a fucking maniac. What? I could never see myself doing this. This is why I'd be dead in Pact. I don't think I could ever take things this far.
Well, we don't know if Blake's going to die from this yet either.
Oh, true.
He really does bleed himself out. In fact, he bleeds himself so much that he bleeds out his Blakeness. He loses core parts of who Blake is, seemingly. Who knows what that means, but we'll find out next chapter, I suppose.
Yeah, I can't wait. I agree. There's going to be a cost to this that's probably more than just... the standard stuff that comes with losing blood, like dizziness and faintness, which he experiences in this chapter.
Yes. But it works. Rose is back, and she hasn't missed too much. Only, 2 of the 3 trials, and Blake has basically got a familiar. But, he's back. She's back.
Yeah. I love how this sort of opens with, she comes in and she's like, oh, wow, what's happening? Did the Sphinx? And he cuts her off there. But I just, instantly bring the Sphinx up just made me go, oh, shit, yeah, Rose has been out for ages. The last time we saw her was when she broke that window at the Sphinxes, and I was just thinking about how much has happened since then, and she clearly just has no idea, and you're like, oh, man, she's so far behind.
Yeah, it's kind of wild. I mean, the Sphinx was last arc on paper, but that arc was long, and a lot of shit happened.
So much has been recontextualized for us in those 10-ish chapters since she disappeared.
Yeah. Blake kind of ends this chapter. He's gone all in on round number 2. He's bled himself out so much that if it comes to a third round, he's pretty fucked. So we'll see how it pays off.
Yeah, and this chapter sort of ends on Blake introducing Rose and Evan, which was this nice little moment where he's just like, Rose, Evan, Rose, you two are pretty much going to have to take the wheel here. I'm fucked.
Yeah, I'm out. I'm off to my nap. You ghosts handle it. Classic Blake. Yeah. And that brings us to the end of Conviction 5.2. A fun chapter where we see Blake really going all in, really paying a high price.
He committed.
Yeah. Now, we wanted to for a little bonus bit this episode, we wanted to bring up another discussion question that kind of came up through discussion when we were talking about this chapter 5.2, talking about Duncan and him as a police officer and, whether he sees himself doing the right thing or not, or kind of is he doing the right thing or not?
Well, I think we should separate the discussion question from Duncan, because I think if we ask it in terms of Duncan, we're going to get at least 99% responses that say it's terrible to do what Duncan did.
Well, because he's a smug jerk, It's hard to separate the.
But looking at it from a sort of more abstract level, I guess the discussion question we're going to ask is, if a practitioner has vowed to serve a system, is it okay for them to break the rules of that system to help deal with magical entities that the rules of that system don't account for? So in a more, to take this example but take the people out of it, if you're a police officer / practitioner and there's a diabolist fucking with stuff, is it okay for you to...
isn't just misunderstood, who is actively fucking with shit.
If it was one of these bad diabolists we hear so much about, would it be okay for Duncan to bend the rules of a normal police officer's duty to take care of the diabolist who's presumably skirting the rules because they have access to magic?
Yeah, and I think if we take this question to the extreme, it's easy to think like, okay, so what? Duncan can plant evidence, sure, then the diabolist has an increased chance of going to jail. He can, convince a jury, make the diabolist definitely go to jail, but then, it's a diabolist. A muggle jail isn't that helpful. Is it okay for him to execute them? Can anonymous policeman number 1 be judge, jury, and executioner? Like,
yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah. I'm interested to hear. I guess what we're sort of asking is where people think the line is. In where is it sort of okay to do this stuff? And I mean, I don't think people should limit themselves to police in this situation either. Like, what if it was a politician? Can a politician do things to take care of magical stuff that maybe is outside what they should normally be doing, or whatever your profession of choice is?
Yeah. I'm interested to hear a situation where it comes under a politician's purview to engage in diabolism. Like, some possessed guy is running against him and he needs to get votes. I don't know. Anyway. That actually maybe explains a lot of Australia's contemporary politics. But let's not get too into that. And that's the end of our episode. That's the end of our episode today. We hope you enjoyed discussing 5.2 as much as we did. If you have other thoughts on this chapter or answers to our discussion question where you draw the line that's different to us, probably. It's always how it seems to go. I always think, it's definitely this. And then we get all these compelling answers that are like, well, actually, it's this. And I totally changed my mind.
Yeah, these sorts of discussion questions really broaden my understanding of topics because people come at it from such unique perspectives. I really like it.
Yeah, it's always very fun. If you have those unique perspectives, and you probably do because, you're a unique person, unique enough, leave your answers to that discussion question in our discussion thread, which will be linked in the episode description.
Yes, and if you want to get up to date on all the other great shows on the Doof Network, you can head to doofmedia.com where you can find all the details on everything Doof.
Newly on the doofmedia.com website is a calendar that tells you when all kinds of cool shows are coming out, and I can look at that calendar to tell you that right around the same time this episode's coming out, will be the Doofcast episode about Undertale will also be coming out. Which I would thoroughly recommend that you all listen to, because Undertale is such a fascinating game. It's rare that we run a media discussion show as well, right? And we intentionally try and steer away from games, but sometimes there are these games that just kind of transcend artistic barriers, and Undertale is one of them. It's definitely something you should check out if you haven't done so already.
Yeah, I've actually just finished the game for the first time. I'd never played it before, and I just finished it in preparation for listening to this episode, and I'm very excited to hear Scott and Matt's thoughts on it, because I agree. I loved it. It was fantastic.
It's pretty wild. Anyway, no spoilers, but definitely check it out. For other news on the Doof Media site, on Doof Media shows and all kinds of cool Doof Media things, perks, benefits that you can get, you should check out the Patreon, patreon.com/doofmedia. You can become a patron and, really get involved with the community and give back to shows that you hopefully enjoy.
Yes, and speaking of Patreon, Wildbow also has a Patreon, and, as we've said before, this is what he does for his job, so try and throw some his way as well.
Especially on this time of year. I think yesterday or 2 days ago when this episode comes out, it's actually Wildbow's birthday, so if you are thankful for the stuff that he's creating, you can go to the Patreon and throw him some money, pledge, or up your donation. I'm sure he would greatly appreciate that birthday gift.
Oh, I didn't know that. Happy birthday, Wildbow.
Happy birthday, Wildbow. That's us for this episode. Our next episode, talking about Conviction 5.3, will be coming out on Monday, the 15th of April. So we'll see you all then.
See ya.